All right, welcome back to another PCBH Corner, and I'm here with Mike Bruner. And Mike, I was actually just thinking, my mind was just thinking how long we've known each other. I think it was 2019. Does that sound right? It was like
Yeah,
right before COVID.
within the first year of my time here at HealthSource, when we had you, guys come over is when we really kind of got to know each other. So
Yeah, I think it was 2019. I think it was literally just right before COVID. But for those, I think people definitely watching this, have seen Mike's name on the listserv, and then also the nuggets that PCBH Nuggets and Mike and his team has put out over the CFH listserv, which we're very, very grateful of. But Mike, for those that don't know you, do you want to introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about where you're from, and also the role that you're in right now.
yeah, sure. So again, I'm Mike Bruner. I'm a psychologist, clinical psychologist, here, kind of outside of Cincinnati, which is I'm born and raised. And I work for HealthSource of Ohio. We're the largest FQHC in Ohio. I think we saw maybe 60, 61, something like that, unique patients last year. And I am the PCBH program manager. My job is basically to try to build and manage a PCBH program here at HealthSource.
And Mike, that last point that you just made, that's exactly what I'm excited about this corner for, is getting to talk to someone that now has been in this role, as you said, coming up on has it been 3 years, or
it's coming up on 4 years in September?
Coming up on 4.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up on 4 years, and really having to build this team. And then also very much, and I think a lot of people probably find themselves in this, that, sooner than probably what they think, they find themselves in a director role and trying to build a program. So I'm really pumped just to get your perspective to help with other people that are potentially going through the same thing. So let me ask, maybe that's the first question that I'll ask you here. If you could go back and talk to yourself when you first were taking this job, and looking at just the what now, what advice would you give yourself when you were first originally starting the program, building this up? What advice would you have?
I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind, interestingly, is kind of the first thing I say to almost everybody, and I think it's something you say all the time, is, hey, start working on practicing some patience and kindness toward yourself now. Just kind of preemptively get that going, other things that come to my mind are just, things take time, that you can't do everything, especially not at the same time. Never make any assumptions that anybody knows or doesn't know anything. You always just kind of make things really clear. This is hard. It's just, it is, and that's okay.
Man, my mind goes so many different places. So I want to jump back to the first thing you said, and almost, I'm sure, corresponds with the last thing that you said, about that patience and that kindness, and that this is hard. It sounds like such an easy thing. My mind, says, like, this sounds like such a no duh thing. Like, hey, be kind to yourself. This is going to be hard and whatnot. One, what do you feel like was the most surprising hard thing about the role at the beginning, that you really just, because, again, being a director, of course, that's going to be hard, right? You're a director of a program, You're building a program, it's going to be hard. Was there anything that you're really surprised about? It's like, I was shocked about how difficult this was going to be. This is shocked about how hard. And then also the second question goes back, what do you do to try to remind yourself of being kind, being patient throughout this process, or anything you intentionally do?
Yeah. So one thing, I don't know if this was one of the first things, but relatively early, a challenge that I had and continue to have is that, yes, there's the challenge of being in a leadership role, and then being a clinician has its own challenges. But what really hit me, and I never thought of until it was happening, is how hard it is to frequently and flexibly shift between those two, and the challenges between the two and how the two pull at each other, you know. And so we've talked, I think, before about a challenge I really have that, and I continue to have, is, you know, if, you know, in perfect la la land, I had all the time I needed for all my leadership and admin stuff, how much less stressful I would be during my clinical times, and how many more patients I'd probably see, how much harder I'd probably work to go hunt down every possible warm handoff. And I've gotten better with that, but it's still just so hard when, you know, in the back of your mind, you have that 12 things that need to be done that aren't related to seeing a patient right now, you know, and then someone cancels. Your first thought, your mind goes, oh, thank goodness, now I can do that. Whereas if you're just a full-time BHC and that's all you do, hopefully, right? And hopefully my mind would say more like, ooh, okay, let me go talk to my team and see who else I can find to see now, you know? That's been very, very hard for me.
You know, what's interesting, bro, is that literally one of the questions I had written down that I wanted to ask you was, how have you balanced clinical and administrative work as you build the program? And I think, you know, this is a question that comes on the listserv a lot, right? Like admin people asking, it's like, hey, how much admin time do you get dedicated, and how much you're clinical? And it's such an interest, particularly working in a community health center that you work in, that it's just such a tough thing at times of trying to find that balance. And while simultaneously you're trying to build a program, which not only requires, as you're saying, not only requires like this administrative support and this like good clinical work to also simultaneously build it. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the shortest answer to that goes right back to what I said before. Probably the best thing that I've done to help with that is work really hard on being kind to myself and being fair with expectations on myself, listening to the compassion, kindness, understanding, fair expectations of other people on me, right? So I'm always harder on myself than anybody else is, you know. My boss, our CMO, is always like much more like, hey, you're doing good, you know, is there anything I can do to help? But otherwise, like, you know, take it easy, basically, you know. And so I think in terms of something specific that I've done, this has been much easier since I've scheduled regular recurring meetings with my boss, the CMO. We touch base monthly to check in on how things are going, progress on things I've been working on, troubleshooting anything, and just kind of more like mentorship and things as well. That has helped a lot, because one of the things that I realized was contributing to a lot of my stress was that lack of communication. You know, it's like the longer you go, you know how our minds work. We care a lot about something. I cared a lot about doing my best with this job. So that question of like, you know, are you doing a good job, easily turns into, you know, fusion with that thought of you're not doing a good job, you know. And so being able to touch base with Dr. Binnig, my boss, regularly, that has both helped me to do a better job, but also, you know, kind of manage those thoughts of like, okay, we're on track and we both agree on that.
Dude, I love that answer in so many different ways. Now, the one thing very quickly I wanted to add, did you approach your CMO for the meeting, or was this something that, you know, they were suggesting? How did that get set up?
It wasn't like I went to her and said, hey, we need to meet every month, but we were meeting kind of irregularly just when, you know, we felt the need. And just kind of, again, it wasn't just like what's on the agenda. There's, you know, there's always an element of that. Like they hired me on knowing that I'm an early career professional and that this was going to be something that they would help me grow into. And so all of our meetings always kind of had an element of kind of, you know, mentorship and such included. And so we would be talking about like, where are you struggling? Where are you doing well? I'm an open book, as you well know. So I had no problem kind of saying, you know, every time I go too long without seeing you, I start freaking out that you think I'm the worst, and so that came out of that. Basically, we agreed that that was something that was, good for me personally, but also would help us do a better job, kind of with the goals that we're, with this mission we have of building this model. So,
and it sounds like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I know you, Mike, and we've been able to develop a relationship, which I've just been very, very grateful for. And this is something I'm just still, I'm just really curious about. One, about how those meetings allowed essentially feedback to be given to almost curtail what your mind was going to, as we always joke, right? Like, if we don't have the information, our mind will fill in the information. And someone who's in the role that you are, you're very motivated, so that means you're going to be critical of yourself, all those different things. So it was almost like a stimulus control for it. And the other thing, and I would love to know if you would be able to talk to this, like, how do you go about doing it? Because I think it sounds good, but it's a hard thing to do, is also expressing like your own vulnerability in those meetings, in that conversation and that discussion. I mean, that blows me away, because I don't think a lot of people would actually be willing to do that, and particularly with their one-up. What allowed you to do that? I mean, what encouraged you to be able to have that vulnerability show up?
Okay. Well, to be honest, I think that's just something that naturally I don't know, I'm lucky that way, that I have no problem saying, hey, I think I'm pretty good at that. And also like, yeah, I'm worried about this.
Well, I'm gonna pause you on that real quick. Maybe that's a good takeaway for people in this. It's like, it's okay to be both, right? It's okay to acknowledge, like, I am good at this. That is okay to acknowledge. And it's also a really great thing to acknowledge, like, I might need support in this. I might need more, because again, expressing that vulnerability. So sorry, I like that.
No, you're good. Yeah. But I mean, speaking to that, I think maybe part of it is, I don't know if it was in high school or what, but I remember a teacher would say sometimes, real humility is being able to acknowledge just not only your weaknesses, but your strengths as well. It's basically objectivity. And that really stuck in my brain. So maybe that was it. But, and then another thing I would say is just that, again, I'm very lucky with the team I have, across the board at Health Source. And I think they create a context where that is not only okay, tolerated, but like encouraged, accepted. One of my favorite sayings that I actually learned here, I never heard of it until 4 years ago, is perfect is the enemy of good. And like, the people at the highest level here say that all the time, and so when you hear that, it creates that frame for like, oh, I don't have to be perfect, so I think that is probably a big part of what allowed that to happen as well.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't want to like hijack, but as we were talking about this, a better answer to your first question came to my mind.
I love it. Yeah.
And I think it's important, right? So I have never considered myself to be someone that had a lot of trouble with anxiety. I've always been pretty confident. I'll just jump in and I'll go. And always been really good with like public speaking. I had the lead role in a lot of plays in school and like things like that, right? So one thing that really did hit me kind of sideways that I wasn't expecting was the level of anxiety that I had as I started trying to do this. That was like kind of new for me. And what I pretty quickly concluded, which helped me deal with it, was that I'm having this level of anxiety because I've never cared this much, about something in my professional life, so, I just thought that was important to throw out there, that was something that surprised me. But if anyone else has that challenge, just remember, it's only because it's something that's so important to you.
Dude, beautiful and very just well said. And couldn't agree more. That's where Bridget and I, anytime we talk about leadership, and Bridget says it really well. It's like there is nothing that's ever been harder than like the director roles, the clinical stuff. Like we'll do that for days, right? This director stuff, building programs and whatnot, as you said, like it just, because of how important it is, because of how much we value this stuff, like our minds just become very, very critical. That's good, man. That's really good.
Another thing, because I know I know how we get together where, you ask me about 3 or 4 different questions and I forget half of them. But another thing that I do that I don't think this is going to blow anyone's mind, but I think it's really important to throw out there is like one of the main ways that I manage this, and have that kindness, compassion is by talking to other people, right? And so meeting with you has been huge, finding other people in similar roles. So I hope he doesn't mind my saying his name, but Jesse Wingate is a fellow kind of like Cherokee alum, and he's in a role similar to mine now, and we talk, every so often, and just sometimes we're commiserating, sometimes we're venting, sometimes we're helping each other kind of troubleshoot things, and that is huge, like because you have like your friends, your colleagues, like I've got some of my besties from Xavier, but they do such different things now. So it's not that I don't talk to them. It's not that we don't provide each other support, but it's not the same as having somebody who's literally doing the same thing you're doing. And when you say, I am worried about this, or this is going on, they know exactly what you're talking about because they are dealing with it too.
And let me ask you this, Mike, building off of that, is there any suggestions? Because again, for people watching this that are in similar roles, early professional, it's interesting about that word. I don't even like saying that word. I remember I think I've grown out of the early professional thing, but I remember it always pissed me off because it'd be like, oh, you're an early professional, so you don't know. So taking that away, it's saying someone extremely experienced that just as far as time goes is the duration for it. So someone similar in that role that also is, heading up a program, being a director. How would you go about getting that peer support? I mean, how did you find people, even the one individual you mentioned, like how did you find that? What would you suggest for people to find those mentors, those peer support? How would you go about that?
I mean, if I were doing it today, knowing what I know, I mean, it would be as simple as I'd hop on CFHA listserv and I would just ask. It would literally be like, do you want to be my friend? Check yes or check no. Jesse, I actually met through Cherokee. Perinda, I think it was, or maybe Suzanne, basically just said, hey, do you want to like make this connection? And it was kismet from there. But there are plenty of other people that I've met, through the listserv, and that I keep in touch with too, and that was how it happened. So I just think, I know we talk about that all the time, but I'm just hitting it again, like easily the most easy way to do that, just reach out. Hey, here's what I have going on. I'd really love to make some connections. If you're interested, let me know. I do kind of a similar thing, just more targeted. Like if I respond to something in the listserv or someone like back channels me, I just throw it out there. I'm really kind of like, hey, like I've really liked even just this little, kind of interaction. I'm always looking for people that are doing stuff like this just to kind of stay connected with, so like, consider me a resource, and if it's okay, like if I ever have any thoughts, I might reach out to you. Is that okay? And they say,
that's brilliant, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. And the thing that I love that you said was, we do say that a lot, right? Like within these conversations, PCBH, like CFHA, reach out, it's a community and stuff. Like I still think it's probably tough for people to really understand that unless they've been in it. And with us not having a in-person conference for the past couple of years, I think that's also made it difficult. And I guess this is that plug again. Like, hey, reach out to Mike, email him.
Sure.
Yeah, 100%. You see him at the conference in Boise. Stop him, talk to him.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that's the other thing, obviously, is the conference. I almost forgot about that because, we haven't been in person, but I've definitely met people at the conference that, I still am in contact with. Another thing for me specifically has been the PCBH leadership certificate class that Sandy is doing.
Hell yeah.
I've really gotten pretty connected with some people through that, and that's been just fantastic. And coming back to the whole early career professional thing, another thing that's helped me is doing that class. It's so kind of diverse in some ways, like who your kind of classmates are. There are people that are not at all, like early career professionals, plenty of experience, yet new to this.
Yes.
There's other people that have been doing something like this for a long, long time. But the point is this, that all of us still have the same challenges. We have the same kinds of questions. Sure, we had, there was collective wisdom there, and there were ways that I was able to give people information that was good info for them and vice versa. But at the same time, there was still that sense of like, we're all the same, and that was really helpful for me to kind of say, okay, I'm not behind, or whatever those things your critical mind throws at you, that has really helped me kind of manage and be at peace and things.
My mind goes immediately to what you were saying about just even meeting with the CMO, almost like a parallel of the stimulus control that it gives, like this feedback of like, hey, let's actually take perspective of where I'm at right now compared to other people, same problems, same things that are coming up. Amen. That's great. Mike, let me ask you this, and I'm embarrassed right now because I feel like I do know it, but I'm not remembering it. What was your pathway? Obviously, we mentioned Cherokee and doing the training there. Is there anything that you would speak about, one, your pathway to PCBH, of how to do it, and then also within that story, was there any moment that you were like, this is it for me? And what was that moment? Like, what was that? Where's your mind go?
So I'm kind of always embarrassed to tell my story, because I feel like the punchline of my story is that I'm just such a lucky person, like everything. It's just, gosh, I don't know. But yeah, so I started at Xavier on the child and adolescent track. And then I want to guess it was in my third year that Abby Beecham, clinical psychologist, came onto the faculty, and she basically introduced health psychology, and specifically primary care behavioral health, as well as ACT, to Xavier, more or less. Might be generalizing, but and that was when right around that time they also started their fourth track, which was HC PALS, healthcare psychology across the lifespan. When she kind of introduced us to all of those things, that was my first aha, this is what I've been wanting, because I actually, I was pre-med when I started undergrad. I even took the MCAT and stuff and just decided that wasn't for me, went into psych, but I still always kind of had that in my head that I wanted more of that side of things too. And so when she introduced this stuff, that was my first, that is what I've been looking for, that I didn't know existed. That's it. That's what I want. And so I never really looked back from that. And then my fourth year practicum was in a primary care setting, and it was, fairly well integrated. And that kind of reinforced that for me. Like, yep, this is right. Now I'm, like I'm still on the right track. But yeah, Cherokee is really, I was very, very lucky to have gotten a spot there for internship. I worked, they had a HRSA grant for an additional student that year, and at their homeless clinic. And that where I was almost full-time there. And that was where it really hit me, like, okay, these are people, like if I was not here, these people might not see anybody. And that's what really was like, boom, I'm this is what I'm doing forever. So.
And then remind me again. So I have a bunch of other questions my mind goes. And then the transition to Health Source was just.
Well, that's when I say that I just feel so lucky and blessed. And all the things is that's how I met them. So, for anyone that doesn't know, needs to know that Cherokee does these BHE training academies where people from all over the nation come about how they do their integrated care there. And Health Source sent a group of people. Funnily enough, I wasn't there at that point. I think maybe I had taken the week off, or I was on my mobile crisis unit rotation or something at that time. So I never met them, but they went for the training academy. They were swimming in the Kool-Aid, and they went to Suzanne or somebody afterwards, said, hey, we want to do this. Do you have anybody? Do you know anyone that's going to be going back to the Cincinnati area? And they said, we definitely do. It's your lucky day, and that was it. So I, kind of talked informally with, I think, Dr. Binnig, and long story short, we agreed that they probably wouldn't be able to work out like an informal postdoc that quickly, but to, definitely stay in touch. And when I'm done with postdoc, to come back. And that's what we did. I did postdoc at the Cincy VA, and
so then let me ask you this. I mean, there had to be, and again, my mind makes predictions, so let me know if this is not the assumption. One, just like I'm sure, an unrelenting excitement about like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to start a program and different things. And then also, I'm sure a lot of fear being like, oh, this is like starting. I mean, what was that process like? Because again, I think why my mind really wants this to be talked about is that these accidents that we talk about, and for everybody that's watched these PCBH corners, this is another person who's a leader in the field, who it wasn't this like skies are parting and some divine intervention comes down and says, you are the person that's going to be like, it's a bunch of accidents that people take opportunities with. But what was that mindset like going into that? Because a lot of people find themselves in that it's like, hey, this became an opportunity sooner than what I thought. Maybe someone left and like, it's like, hey, what do you think? Do you want to jump into this? What was that like for you at that stage?
So I actually will say that when that was offered to me, I had no hesitation. That was my dream job, basically. Like literally what they offered me was 100% exactly what I hoped to be able to do someday. And I was thinking, this is just starting to become a thing in the Cincinnati area. Like, I think I have gotten very lucky to fall into having some expertise in this at a time where, usually someone straight out of postdoc is not going to get that kind of opportunity, because there's so many other people that are so much more expertise and everything. But I was like, I've really kind of fallen into some luck here where at my level, I'm actually kind of an expert in this geographic area,
And can I pause you on that real quick? That I love that you said that, because that could not be more true, right? That, people, all these organizations, I talk to people all the time. It's like, hey, we're looking for someone that has like expertise in PCBH and also has leadership development. It's like, look, I'm not saying not to look for that. I'm just saying like, there's not a lot of people out there, and getting training like from Cherokee, you absolutely were on this like different level. And I think for people watching this, having that recognition of, if you have some experience in PCBH, you're way ahead of the game when we're talking about developing programs. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, for sure. Like, and I agree. Like, I think even in the last 5-7 years, whatever it's been, I think that's changing. It's growing so much all over the place, but I still absolutely think that's true. I mean, having, any PCBH experience, at the internship level or beyond is still like pretty uncommon, So anyway, what else can I say about that? In terms of the process, some of the things where I felt really good about the early planning and stages for Health Source were, even when I kind of met with Dr. Binnig and Bridget Fawcett as our COO, but from the beginning, they had some good ideas about how they wanted to do this. And it was basically, you're going to start out mostly clinical. We're basically going to do this proof of concept. You're going to kind of implement the model at one site at our Loveland office here where I am now. And we're going to kind of try to make it work there, show that we can make it there. And then we're going to build like one site at a time. We're going to get one more full-time BHC. That was something that really spoke to me, is that they, from the beginning, did not have any plans to try to spread the wealth as much as possible, which we were just talking, there's pros and cons there, that we were going to have each BHC be full-time at one site. And we were going to do that incrementally, one at a time, and kind of avoid that pull to try to like blow this up in 20 days. That really spoke to me, and that worked really well. Now, as you well know, since then I've kind of gotten to where I'm like, no, let's go. I want to just get this done, but for me back then, that was really nice. We had planned for a year. We'd work on it for a year at Loveland and then assess whether we were ready to expand. And actually, after 6 months, things were going so well that we just decided there's really no point in waiting to at least start recruiting. And that's when we started trying to build out. So
such cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Man. So cool. You know, I don't know, man. I've just been so grateful for this conversation, and even hearing a little bit more of this. I think it's going to be so useful for people, regardless of their stage of the career, getting into that director role. It just that is just really, really cool. You know, as we begin to end, the one thing I was going to see if you wanted to talk a little bit about, we were talking about this before the PCBH Corner, is your postdoc that's going to be.
Yeah, you're going to let me put a plug in. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be any surprise that one of the barriers we're running into is workforce development. And so one of the ideas that we came up with, which I think I know you guys do that, and Cherokee does that, and plenty of others, is to, to build some training programs, and that can help with short-term and long-term workforce development. And I just love teaching, even just having practicum students has been, such a, man, it just really helps. It just really helps with kind of the why and the enjoyment, of this job. But anyway, so we are partnering with ATSU, who we host their residency, students from the residency program here. They got a HRSA grant. I can't remember the fancy name or kind of code for it, but basically the idea is, to do things to expand integrated care in primary care settings and to improve the training in integrated primary care for both medical and behavioral. And so we've been working on this, and probably the biggest part of that is that we're going to start recruiting for a postdoc program this fall or next year, for next fall. That would be I'm really excited. We've got some really cool ideas. We've got some good sites that are just itching for a BHC where people would be very, very welcome and appreciated. We've got some cool ideas for some cross training between the fellows and the medical residents, and how, some umbrella supervision with the practicum students. So we've got some cool ideas to kind of enrich and, see lots of patients, help lots of people as we try to do as BHCs, but also do some other cool stuff to kind of enrich that training experience.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes. Yeah. Mike, I just, again, my gratitude for this. This is, I'm fired up right now, just different ideas. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for talking about these different things. And, my mind goes, like I said before, I always, it always rubbed me a wrong way when people be like, oh, early career and stuff, and like using terms like a rising star and stuff, like you're here, you're a star, So I just really do appreciate all the work that you're doing within PCBH and building these programs, and obviously within the communities of where you're working at. And again, plugging that for people. If you see Mike at the conference, stop him, talk to him, share information on the listserv, email, definitely reach out to him for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate this so much, man. Like having the opportunity to chat with you and, just kind of yak it, anyone wants to.
We'll have you back for sure. We'll have you back for sure. So definitely until next time. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Have a good one all.